All right, it is 7 o'clock. We will call to order our Tuesday, September 20th City Council meeting. Let's start with roll call.
Councilman Becker,
Here.
Hartwick, here. Councilman Johnson,
Here.
Councilman Schultz,
Here.
President Scheer.
Here. Agenda item 3 is public hearings. This evening we have none. Agenda item 4 is public comment. Just as a note, the city council will receive comments from city residents. Comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per individual. Anyone wishing to speak is required to sign up in advance or state the following items for the record when called upon. That would be name, address, subject matter, and contact information. No action will be taken on any public comments unless the item is also elsewhere on the agenda. Do we have any in-person signups? None. This will be a first call for public comment. This will be a second call for public comment. This will be a third and final call for public comment. Seeing none, hearing none, we'll move right along. Agenda item 5 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda that is outlined below is presented for action by the city council. Items may be removed from the consent agenda on the request of any one council person. Items not removed may be adopted by one action without debate. Removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the council president.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion about the items on the consent agenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Agenda item 6 is petitions, requests, and communications. 6A is the presentation from Hoffman Development Group LLC and Cedar Prize LLC relating to the Banker Road Development Project.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the folks from Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize for attending the meeting this evening to introduce themselves and present our master development agreement between our entities relating to the Banker Road residential development. Just as a quick reminder of how we got here, the city council in 2018 had the foresight to buy 3 parcels, about 75 acres of land along Banker Road. In 2021, the city annexed that property and contracted with Vanderwall and Associates to create a couple concept neighborhood plans that set forth the priorities for the future development of the priorities of the council and the community for the development of those parcels. In 2022, staff released a request for interest to the development community to see who was interested in the excellent opportunity to partner with the city on the project and shape the future of our community. Of the 3 responses, the proposal from Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize rose to the top in every category, and they're here tonight to present their development approach, project timeline, and next steps. And with that, I will turn it over to you all for introductions.
Everybody hear me? Good. Thank you, Rebecca, for that glowing introduction. I didn't really hear how we were hired, so I really appreciate that. So again, as Rebecca said, we were hired a while ago to really look at the Banker Road facility or the residential area. Today we'll be talking a little bit about our team, our process, and looking for that action on the master development agreement. So quickly, some of the meeting objectives, we'll be introducing some of the team that is here. We've got everyone except for one of them that's pictured on your material in front of you. We'll go over project approach, financing approach. We'll go over some of the concept plan goals, and then some of the things that we've received as well coming from the city. We'll review a short timeline and we'll talk about next steps. Some of the people that we have here with us, as Rebecca mentioned earlier, Hoffman Development Group, or HDG, is a company that I'm a part of. I'm one of the co-founders, as well as 2 of the people behind me that you'll see. One is Stephen Rourke. He is one of the co-founders as well, one of the managers of HDG, as well as Joe Trueheart, who's also one of the co-founders. As we go through some of this, you'll see that we have subsidiary type companies as well as development companies. So I'll review that in a bit just to kind of clear that up. We also, for purposes of this meeting, We have Corey Scheidler with us with Cedar Corporation, as well as Josh Miller from Cedar Corporation. Our two companies, Cedar Corporation, Cedar Prize, as well as Hoffman Development Group and Hoffman Planning Design and Construction, have been working together for quite a while. So our MO has typically been, while Cedar Prize and Cedar Corp do a lot of the upfront civil type work, as well as surveying and that kind of thing, all the things that you need to figure out whether or not a project is viable, complement Hoffman Planning Design and Construction, as well as Hoffman Development Group, in a complementary situation where Hoffman will do everything beyond that. So our two companies were formed and formed actually a partnership a while back so that we could deliver projects just like this. And we're working in many places throughout the state of Wisconsin, throughout the Midwest, and some places throughout the US. So that's given that piece of information. I'll quickly go over somewhat of the team structure. I went over this to some degree already, but Hoffman Development Group is basically a development entity that's subsidiary is Hoffman Planning Design and Construction, who does just that, planning, design, and construction. So we're basically a one-stop shop as far as that's concerned. And when we have Cedar Prize, who's also a developer, we take each other's strengths and we meld them into a cohesive group that can work with a community like Fort Atkinson, bringing all of the services that we have in order to develop a complete project from start to finish. Some of the projects that our two groups have worked on together and have done as far as our separate entities are concerned are up on the screen. They range from multifamily, senior living, women's religious, educational facilities, commercial, and what we'll be talking about much tonight, as far as our presentation is concerned, is multifamily residential. And by all means, if there are any questions as I go through this, please feel free. So we talked a little bit about how we go about our work, but many of our projects stem from municipal work. We're, as the slide illustrates here, we're experienced master planners. What is a master planner? It's someone who takes a tract of land or just a site and understands what the capacity is, what the pedestrian vehicular flow needs to be, the infrastructure, the roadways, and the buildings. So when we do these types of projects, all of those things and many others have to be taken in mind. So when we do these types of projects, we're always looking for the benefit that would come from us doing those projects based on the community and what their needs are. And as it says here, we've partnered with hundreds of municipalities. So, and I'll go over this in a bit, but the subsidiary Hoffman Planning Design and Construction has been in business for about 130 years. We've been doing this a long time. Cedar Prize and Cedar Corp have also been in business for about 50 years. So with that, there's a lot of horsepower behind us and what we bring to the table. We can self-perform all the required work. We talked a little bit about what the two companies can do to really complement each other as far as from beginning to the very end. We see here that success equals community and municipal support. So really what we're saying there is every one of our developments has a component that will support and will make and have a community thrive and grow based on what we're providing. So our major intention is always to make sure that we're providing a product that will work for the municipality and the community at large. And what it says at the bottom there, projects suffer with a lack of communication. Our typical way of operating, and it will be for Fort Atkinson as well, is to make sure that we're meeting on a weekly basis. The last thing we want is for misunderstanding, gaps, or overlaps for that matter. So we want to make sure that we're communicating in a very purposeful way, very efficient way, but yet making sure that we over communicate, because there's many things that, especially these days when you have virtual meetings and whatnot, that there's many times that you can have gaps in those communications. We want to make sure that we eliminate those. We talked a little bit about that first bullet as so again, vertically integrated. What does that mean? everything that we do from a service perspective, from a delivery perspective, design, construction, and finance is all provided within one group, our group. So with that, there aren't any gaps where we have to go and seek others for expertise and so forth. It's really all just our companies that do that. And we make sure that we deliver on quality, timeliness, and budget. And with that, we couldn't have been in business for 50 and 130 years if we didn't do something right. So in that situation, we want to make sure from a management perspective that we are managing properly and that we are communicating very clearly. Excuse me, the one-stop shop turnkey, you hear a lot of different terms out there, design, build, you hear all kinds of terms. You kind of have to step back and say, what do they really mean? So from a one-stop shop perspective, again, we kind of went through that as far as what we're able to bring and make sure that we are the ones who are delivering on your behalf. The one thing I did want to call up one of our team members, Stephen, to talk about is the finance part of things, and to basically go over how the finance component to this from our development delivery perspective works. With that.
Thank you, City. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. We are a one-stop turnkey real estate development group, and that means that we do everything from visualization, conceptualization, planning, design, architectural, construction management, all the way to certificate of occupancy. We invest our services at risk in the pre-development portion of this project, meaning that there's no external source, there's no owner, anyone paying us to do our pre-development work. It's all at risk. We absorb those costs internally. We look to get reimbursed at the close of financing and then paid for our services going forward. So we are 100% at risk. As it relates to financial commitments, what we're generally doing is, I spent 25 years on Wall Street, public finance. I finished my career with Truist Financial. I moved into the development space about 10 years ago. So throughout this whole pre-development and development process, we are pre-underwriting the financing internally. So we're putting together sources and uses of funds, financial pro formas. We're solving for equity, TIF, PACE, grants, mezz, debt. We're pre-underwriting this throughout the whole process so that we continue on a path where we're deciding go, no go at every single point where there could be a critical decision. And so throughout this process, we're making certain that this project will be financed and will be developed and will be completed. When we get to the point where the project is fully entitled through the pre-development process, fully entitled meaning we have all the regulatory approvals, governmental approvals for a particular project to be built on a particular piece of dirt. That's when we know we can close financing. We are not owners of projects. We do not have our own portfolio. We are not building it for ourselves. That's something we need to be very clear about. At a point in time when the project's fully entitled and shovel ready, a new ownership group will step into our shoes. We will assign them our development agreement that we have with the city of Fort Atkinson. They will be the owner. Prearranged financing will close on their behalf. They will hire us then to build the project for them. So there will be a new company, ownership group at some point in the future. They will be vetted by us. They will be vetted by financing, and they will be vetted by the city before that development agreement is assigned over to them. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Any questions? This is usually where we get the questions.
I do have one question about that. How have you seen that process unfold if there's ever been an instance of one of the two parties wanting to move forward with an owner and one of the two not?
Okay. The ultimate decision lies with the city. We will have vetted them, financing will have vetted them, and then we will present them to the city. And they will stand before you just like we are with a complete package. Here's who we are, here's what we've owned, developed, operated, exited through a sale process. They will tell you who they are. And if you don't like them, you can tell us you don't like them, and we'll go to the second group that we have, or the third. Or the city may have an ownership group that they prefer to step in and take over the development agreement with the city and hire us to build the project. It could be a local business person, local family office, local ownership group. You know, we aren't the ultimate decision maker. We just do our work on behalf of the city and let the city be the ultimate decision maker.
Can you just explain to me too, this is a very new process for me
Yeah.
here in this position, but why does that dynamic exist? Why does that ownership need to be transferred at that
Okay.
stage before construction?
Okay. There are a lot of entities out there. I like to use the word entity because it could be a REIT. It could be a private individual. It could be an LLC. It could be a corporation that like to own facilities, but they aren't developers. And they don't have any clue what it takes to complete the pre-development work to get a project fully entitled, get it shovel ready and build it. So they look to people like Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Price to do the work that we do and then bring it to them. So all we have to do is close financing and build it and they own it. We de-risk it for them, just like we de-risk it for the city.
What type of entities realistically do you see interested in a development like this in a city like Fort Atkinson? Are we talking mainly local groups, or do you think this will attract, regional groups possibly?
My guess would be everything from Chicago to Door County. And I say that with a little jest because I've traveled that myself many times. We have groups in Chicago that we're working with already. Some of our preferred bankers are in Chicago. We do have groups in Wisconsin that have said, when you get it fully entitled, shovel ready, give me a call. But there's no need to call me until then. So we do have some parties already teed up. We expect it to be local, regional, but then again, my history is 25 years on Wall Street. I have a lot of New York relationships that would like to own projects and facilities in Wisconsin as well, because they know me, trust me, and they trust my team.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So that's how we close. We have prearranged financing, or they may have their own financing. Either way, financing closes, and then we build the project. And that was the last point. The next page is mine as well. I was at an economic summit. I did not put this slide together. If I had, I would have put a different bullet point as number one. I would have put community, because we're all here to serve the community. The city is, and we are as well. The role of the city is to serve the community, and that is through economic development, making certain there's quality, affordable housing, making certain that the infrastructure is in place. What we hear a lot in Wisconsin, we give these presentations to a lot of cities. We're engaged by other cities right now on master plan developments for large parcels of land. What every city is telling us is there are so many businesses looking to expand or relocate to our community, but they can't because there's not quality, affordable housing. And so the role of the city is to make certain that they're working both ends towards the middle. What comes first? Chicken or egg? What comes first, the business or the housing? What we've learned is really the housing has to come first to drive the businesses to relocate. So the first project that we're going to be promoting is the multifamily housing component, because if we get that under development, then businesses will know what's coming and then they'll consider relocating or expanding. So the role of the city is to work with us to help us get the housing built to attract the businesses. The role of the developer, that's us. I've already told you what we do. I'm not going to go through that again, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The role of the owner is to basically step into our shoes, and they'll be fully qualified, fully vetted. You'll have the last say on whether or not you will allow them to be the owner. This is city-owned land. This is a public-private partnership. We're here to serve you. We're here to serve the citizens. This is not a piece of dirt that we're buying and building spec. So everything we do is in collaboration, and it's always the city that has the final vote. And that's the color of the brick, the type of shingles. You're going to have some input on all of that. We may give you some pushback, but it will typically be cost-based. It will say, yeah, we would love to do that too, but it's too expensive. But you'll have input on a lot of the design, square footage, unit mix. The city will be working with us through all of that. And that's for the multifamily and the single family. And so I think that ends my portion. I think I'm supposed to hand it off to Joe Trueheart now. Joe's going to talk about the Bowen National Research Report. And so. Thanks, Peter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Trueheart, Vice President of Construction at Hoffman Planning, Design and Construction, and co-founder of Hoffman Development Group. And Stephen alluded to a couple of checkpoints, or gotta hit the button here. Now you did it.
Teamwork.
You're going the wrong way.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. I can't see it. There you go. There we go. I don't know if I'm in control. It doesn't seem like it. We'll be here for a little bit. Oh, now we jumped off. Oh, now we're back on. Things are happening. So Stephen alluded to some of these checkpoints, if you will, go, no go decision points. One of our very first decision points or help make that decision is commissioning a market study, a market report. So we use a company called Bowen National Research. They are a national research company that investigates rental markets, looks at what's for rent, what's the demand, and all of that. And I think, Rebecca, you had said you were going to forward that on to the members after our discussion here. But what I wanted to do was highlight just a few of the items that the market report pointed out for us. So one of the first ones here is the current occupancy rate of the comparable properties. So that's 428 units of comps that they looked at. 3 of them are market rate properties that all have waiting lists. One of them is a LIHTC property that has 36 units, and there's already 30 families on the waiting list for that one property.
Could you explain what that means?
LIHTC, or so LIHTC is a low income housing tax credit property. Generally, they're I believe 30 or 40% AMHI as the cap that of what your income can be. So in order to qualify to rent a unit in one of those properties. So therefore and those properties are subsidized through tax credits through the state. And that's how they do that. Those are a totally different type of project from what we're doing. Okay. The next item here is only one of that 8 comparables. Only one of the 8 were built within the last 10 years. So that's telling.
Can you tell us where they are? Where those 8 are?
Yeah. So they what they do is they do a primary market area when they do the market report, and it's within a certain diameter, if you will, of Fort Atkinson. So Fort Atkinson is the center. They look around the area. It goes out, I don't know how many miles. I'd have to look exactly on that report to see exactly what that one is.
I briefly glanced at the report.
Yeah.
I believe there were a couple here in Fort Atkinson. There were some in Jefferson. I believe there were some in Whitewater.
Yeah.
Lake Mills and Whitewater
Yes.
as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
So it's older stock, right? That's what they're getting at. There's not a lot of new stock on the market right now. Most are 15 to 20 years old is what they pointed out to us. The next bullet point here is over half of all the renters would qualify for housing in the affordable component of our project. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. So in our projects, all of our projects that Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize does as a team has an affordable component. We do an 80-20. So 20% of our units are considered affordable. What does that mean? That we are targeting in those 20 units is a 60% AMHI cap, right? So it's meant for individuals that aren't necessarily in the lowest income. So we're not competing with the LIHTC properties, even though there's obviously a need for that too. But we're kind of hitting that middle gap of income, right? Right now, the AMHI, the average median home income for the area that they studied is $47,580. So what we would do is 60% of that would be the cap for the income level that you'd be allowed to enter into one of the reduced rent rate properties or units for our property. Am I clear on that?
Can
Sorry.
you just confirm, would that be the number for our community, or would our number actually be solely the median income for the city of Fort Atkinson?
That is the number that for your community.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was for the diameter of the area that was included in this.
Well,
study.
so it's for the area, but your community is included in that area.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes.
So it was the study area.
It
I
was
mean,
the
so
study
it was
area.
that study
You're right.
area, and that's the number that they would use then when determining the 60%.
Okay.
For this
Yeah,
project.
and these numbers are also, you can verify those, and if you look on, I think the WIDA websites, they also verify those numbers. If you look, it was really close. I checked just as a double check, and it's pretty close to the same number. It's not exactly the same, but it's really close that they came up with the same. The other item that I'm going to point out is capture rates. I'm going to explain capture rates a little bit. So in the report, you'll see that, and they have a fairly large section about the capture rate. So when we're looking at capture rates, what that is how much of the demand are we capturing with this project? So the project that we put forth to Bowen National Research was a 120 unit project, 20% affordable, and the other 80% market rate properties or units. So we are only capturing with this, if we add 120 units into the market, we're only capturing 6.1% of that demand. So of the need, we're only filling 6.1% of the need is the way I'll put it. Right. So when we're looking at projects, the guidance that they give to us is anything under 12% is a thumbs up. Right. So that's that check mark that we're looking for. Yep. Is it a go, no go type project? Is it a go, no go community? What we're seeing in this report indicates very strongly that it is, right? When we look at the simple capture rate, when they're only looking at the eligible renters that are at the 60% AMHI level, that capture rate falls to 1.1%, which is extremely low. We're barely making a dent in the demand with the number. So that's where we were talking earlier. There's a potential here for even more multifamily than the 120 units that we're proposing initially. You'll see that, I think, when we get down the road a little bit, but that's how this first market report was put together, was based on 120 units, just to see what the need is.
This matches everything we've seen. We had a housing study done by UW Whitewater 2 or 3 years ago, and I mean, the data was very similar and anecdotally matches everything that I've heard. And I mean, we haven't had a new apartment building built in Fort Atkinson, I believe, about 20 years. So there's obviously so much pent up demand that hasn't been met.
Do you guys help find developers who are interested in building these buildings, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that's.
Or are you the developer? You will develop? Because I think Fort's had a trouble in the past where building near Madison was more profitable than building in small town Fort Atkinson.
We were having this discussion earlier. So one of our challenges, right, that we've realized recently, not realized recently, but so we all know about inflation, right? All know about it. It's impacting everything we do, right? And it's obviously impacted construction costs dramatically. So one of our biggest challenges that we have is rent rates are not increasing at the same rate as construction costs are increasing, right? So construction costs are skyrocketing through the roof. Lumber prices have been way up, right? Triple what they were, quadruple numbers. But it's come down, right? It's come down quite a bit on lumber and other materials, other construction materials have come down. But not to the level, it's not being matched with rental rates, right? So we're still trying to keep the rents low. And that's one of our biggest challenges, one of our biggest hurdles. So that's why when you're building in a community such as Fort Atkinson, it can be a little bit of a challenge, but we can combat that with the density, right? If we build 120 units or 140 units, we can build a little bit more volume to help combat those construction costs. So on the next page.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Mike? Can you just confirm so that 80-20 affordable component, is that written in then to whatever agreement or contract you have in place with whoever takes
Yeah,
that ownership
great
after
question.
pre-development?
Yes, it is. It's actually part of our financing package.
Okay,
It's a financing requirement from one of the, and Stephen can speak to this better than I can. But it's one of the requirements of where a part of our financing comes from. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I think it needs a little clarity.
Yeah.
Okay. If I was in their chairs, I'd want somebody to come up and give a little clarity. I'm going to address two things. I'm going to address Mr. Bruce Johnson first and comment from Forest Development. And that it's more profitable for them to build projects around Madison, Milwaukee, et cetera. We operate under the model of a nonprofit developer. Our structure, and I'm getting into some of our secret sauce here, so it's going out to the public. So our model utilizes the underwriting and placement of tax-exempt municipal bonds, private activity bonds for multifamily housing, and the requirement is that it includes 20% affordable component. So I'm answering both of your questions sort of in a blended response. Our nonprofit model means that the owner is looking at this from the same perspective that we are, and that's public service. They have an owner fee built into the model where they get 2% of the gross income. Because we're using tax-exempt bond financing as part of our model, we only need 10% equity instead of your typical 25% equity. Because we only need 10% equity, that's a higher return on a smaller percentage of the capital stack than if you were going out into the private sector needing 25% equity. If you need some clarity, I'll be happy to answer this. We're solving for 10% equity, and as it flows to the bottom line on the pro forma, we are solving for 1.1 time debt service coverage ratio. So there's only 10% profit in our model, where if you go to a conventional lender, they're going to want to see 1.25 times debt service coverage ratio. So that owner is making a 25% profit spread at the end of the day versus the nonprofit spread, which allows us to work for 1.1 times coverage. Some of that extra profit flows down to repair and replacement and maintenance. So at the end of the day, there's really no extra, there's very little extra profit participation to be distributed to the owner. They're looking at this from a totally puristic, is that the right word? They're looking at this from an altruistic way. And that is, they know that there's a need for market rate housing that has an affordable component. They're doing this for the good of the community. They get their 2% fee. If they happen to manage it more efficiently and effectively, there's more profit that might flow down to them, but that's because they did a good job. It's not because they modeled it out in the beginning, the profit in the beginning. Their entire motivation is to hire the best management company to manage the profit more effectively and efficiently, to drive more profits to the bottom line so that they can profit, not design it from the very beginning. And that what puts us in a public-private partnership. Okay, our interest, our motivation, our mandate is to do exactly what the city does, and that's be effective, almost citizens of the community. I mean, we don't live here, but we do work like we live here, and that is to be respectful of every dollar. Does that help answer your questions?
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little bit cloudy on the front. There's just sounds like there's a ton of hoops to jump through. And we need somebody like you who's been there jumping
Yeah.
the hoops before to get them all organized so we can hop through them and
I-
reach a point of shovel ready.
Yeah, I did
Is
it.
shovel ready something that's in the near future, or are we looking at something in the far future?
Hoffman Planning, Design and Construction. Hoffman Planning, Design and Construction, our affiliate firm, has acted as a construction manager or owner's representative, doing exactly what we're doing today, except for solving for financing. It's them plus one creates design, build, finance development company. I'm solving for the financing. I did it for 25 years, BB&T before it became Truist Financial. I left in 2011 to become a developer, and I'm taking those talents I learned as a banker and just transferring them onto the development ledger. So I'm solving for a capital stack that sometimes means that I'm going to be closing 12 different sources of financing on the same day to be able to build a project. You're just going to have to trust me, Bruce, that I can do it. And if you want to buy me a cup of coffee, I live in Menasha 4 months of the year. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee before I leave next Thursday, I'll come down here and join you and we'll sit in a coffee shop and I'll explain it further.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now you know everything. So I'm just gonna wrap up real quick. What I was talking about earlier on the market report, that was for the multifamily component. The next page, is that this one? Can't see that one. Yep. Is regarding the single family homes. So the bullet points here are nearly half of the homes sold in 2022, built since 1990 at a median price of $300,000. Newest products built since 2010 has a median sales price of $335,000. The modern single family homes are commanding the premium price within the area. Again, we look at the capture rates here based on the number of, I believe it was 140 single family homes is what we built the report around. So 5.2% two bedroom was the capture rate and 4.5%, still much below the 12% threshold rule of thumb that they like to use. So obviously still a strong need even after that's built, right? After that's built out. You did awesome. Awesome. Like things are magically happening. All right. So the next thing, so some of the items, right? Well, this is the on this sheet here, this is the Van de Waal concept 2 that was provided to us in the request for interest document that we responded to. And I don't know that we're really looking at we're not at wholesale changes on this at all. We're actually, if we scroll down to the next page, you'll see what what we would consider our first area of interest, which is starting on the south. And a lot of that has to do with some of the infrastructure that's coming into the site, that's coming from the south. We can roll that into some of this work here that would be happening. So there we're looking at 4 or 5 potential multifamily buildings that would comprise of the 120 to 140 units that we're trying to capture. And then we've got some imagery off to the right side of that page, indicating the types of potential projects that we would look at developing there. On the next page, we get into our project timeline. So starting at the top, so stage 1, we start with our due diligence process, which has really been helped a lot with the information that the city's provided to us. We've got a ton of information, a lot of things, some things we will need to update in the near future. Some things we won't. But so we're gonna once the master development agreement is signed, then we would wrap that process up with due diligence. So site gathering information, doing some master plan review, revisions. You saw the very early stages of that on that last slide. Then we would move into stage 2, which is our pre-development section, where we're really starting to dig in a little bit more into our site and civil work, working out, okay, where are we bringing the utilities from, getting some preliminary concepts down on paper, some routing for that. Trying to understand stormwater management, which is always a big thing, you know, in the state of Wisconsin. Doing a little bit of marketing and promotion, starting to refine really some of our drafting a project development agreement, right? So the way that we work is we start with this overarching master development agreement for the entire area, and then we start chewing it up in small chunks. So where are we going to start? This first project on the south side would be project 1. We would come back, we would develop a concept for that, develop a pro forma, a budget, timeline, develop all of that stuff. And that's the stuff that Steve was talking about. We do all of that on our own dime at our risk, right? If we can't make a project float, then you're not out on anything, and that's on us. We do all of that, come back here, present that project through a project development agreement. We'll draft a project development agreement for that one area, and then get that approved, present that as a project. And then we take that, because we need to have that approval in order to get financing, right? So then that's when we start the next step, which is that finance section, stage 3, investor outreach and finance. We take that approval, we take all of our documents, put it in a package, bring it to Stephen's investment people, and we go down that path of getting the project financed. Once we get it financed, we step into stage 4. We close financing, and then we're off to the races at that point with finishing our design. We're probably got to finish our design development drawings, construction documents, final budgets, schedules, things like that. And then we pull the trigger in stage 5 with actual turn in dirt. And we've got that slated for Q3 of 23 right now, which would then give us a completion date in 2024, so that it would hit tax rolls in 2025.
You typically do a single area at a time, or are you doing multiple areas of the
Good question.
Project?
So once we really hand this into our financing side, that the rest of us free up and we start going down the next road. Because really, once we get that project development agreement in hand, we know our timelines, we know how the things can be, what's the pro forma look like, how does all of that work out with the city, and then we put that package together. But then it's really in our financing hands, and then the rest of us, we started looking at, we would have these conversations, obviously. Okay, what is the next area, what is the next thing we want to tackle within development? So I would see that happening next year as well, in 2023. So we're looking at Q1, so early next spring, something like that, we can start talking about, what is the next step. We're already going to have a little bit of that figured out anyway, because you can't just in a silo say, well, this is going to be our first area, without thinking what is really going to be the next spot too. So we already have been talking about that a little bit. What do we do to the north, what do we do to the east, especially because our tones change a little bit when we saw the market report. Honestly, we're like, okay, maybe we don't need townhomes right away, we need more density right away. So some of that we need to look at. We may need to do an update to the market report. It's like, okay, this is the next one. Does this pass muster? If we say we want to do another 120 units, does that still work, or is that too much? Right. And that's it. And Steve is up.
Couple of things I wanted to clarify. So you asked about progression and what's the next thing. So typically what we want to do, as Joe mentions, you want to build some density. You want to be able to drive some of your tax collection up so that you can start the next project. This will be in a stepped approach phases over time. But we want to make sure that the taxes being collected are going to help pay for the next set of developments that are going to happen. So that's why we don't necessarily start everything at one time. We allow the taxes collected to help finance the rest of the development.
Steve,
other-
can I just jump in on that for just a second? So at the last city council meeting, we did have a workshop for the tax increment districts. So this project will be in, if the tax increment district number 9 is approved by the Joint Review Board, Plan Commission and City Council, then this project would be in the tax increment district number 9, and we would be using tax increment financing to help support the project.
Thank you for that.
When Steve refers to the taxes driving the additional infrastructure, that's through the tax increment district.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to clarify and just kind of put a little more clarity around it is we talk about the master development agreement that we're looking for approval tonight. That is for the entire development, the entire acreage out there. When Joe and Stephen were talking about a project development agreement, that is for just the single area that Joe was talking about earlier that starts with a multifamily. So there's 2 different agreements that we're talking about in every single phase. So we're talking about area 1 being multifamily. That would be one development agreement, a project development agreement. But there are others after that. So there'll be multiple agreements. Obviously, what we're trying to do is make sure that everyone is on the same page and making sure that you know exactly what we're up to. Lastly, with regard to due diligence, Joe was concentrating on this at the beginning when he was talking about stage 1. So if we can go back to that last, sorry, forward, right there. Thank you. So these are some of the things that are in progress. As you can see with the check mark, the market study has been completed, and Joe reviewed a lot of that and the high points of it. But we'll be working on boundary maps, CSM, certified survey maps, the plats, the topography, sanitary sewer, storm, water, geotech. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we're going to be doing as due diligence at first stage that Joe was talking about earlier. I believe wetland delineation is in progress, or at least is been proposed on, as well as I think, as Rebecca said, the start of the discussion about the TIF district. So next steps, what's coming after this? The hope is that you'd select our team and sign the master development agreement. But after that comes what I'd mentioned earlier. We'll be working on area 1, that multifamily component that Joe was reviewing, and we'll be working on the project development agreement for that. Any further questions?
Just to confirm, the master development agreement is for 12 months. Is that always the case? Is that the only, I mean, I guess I'm just looking at, the timeline. It looks like ideal is that construction would start basically a year from now on that first project. And then is the idea then that then we would potentially renew?
Yes, so absolutely. So, well, and the project development agreement would take over basically as the areas were being developed. We'd still have the master development agreement. So going at your first point, though, with regard to the master development agreement, that is a 12-month due diligence time period to make sure that it's viable, that it pencils, that it will work financially, as well as all the other things that you saw on that list that we'll be doing. So that's all part of due diligence. That's all part of the master development agreement. And yes, we will be talking about moving forward with different agreements, as I had mentioned, with regard to project development agreements and so forth. Does that answer your question, Megan?
Yes, thank you.
And Steve, we had talked too before about how each project development agreement would automatically extend that master development agreement.
Correct. Other questions?
If I could, I'm going to recap, make sure I'm grasping this right. So the city of Fort Atkinson bought 75 acres along Banker Road. for the equivalent of somewhere around $750,000 plus administrative fees. Obviously, we as a city want to start developing that property and meet the needs of the community through housing. I know one of the key comments I've heard is that one, there's not enough places to move, and that's been especially my case. When I first moved to Fort Atkinson, the first place I looked was for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, which I couldn't find any that were vacant. So then I had to move to buy a house. The first phase that we're looking at is to, one, serve those immediate needs with dense housing that's likely going to be sold quickly to a property management company, some other entity.
Investor ownership group, yep.
Yep. That's likely that shares some or means that they also are going to want to make sure that the project is successful, that they're filling those units, driving, bringing or creating more housing for the community. And basically the proposal that you presented today includes, risk that not your organization is also taking in the due diligence and planning to start kicking off this development in the Baker Road development.
So if I could clarify a little bit with regard to that due diligence and the risk that we're taking, that's going to be a fair amount of money for us to invest, to investigate, and to make sure that, as I'd mentioned before, that it pencils, that it will raise the dollars that are needed, that it will provide the community with the much needed housing that it needs. But yeah, as we go through due diligence, we are constantly making sure this project is viable. That's really the bottom line to this, so that by the time we're done vetting everything, we know that it will make money, that it will pencil, and that our investors will invest in it.
All right, sounds great.
Good. Any other questions?
I guess one thing I want to ask, because I always have residents ask about this, the affordable housing component. I heard that term used tonight, affordable housing, but we're not necessarily talking about low income housing. We're talking about market rate, or I guess sometimes the term would be workforce housing might be part of the mix of this.
Well, workforce housing has kind of a different nuance to it. To some degree, it's not low income housing tax or low income housing, but it's a different type of product that would be put in place than what we're trying to put in place. Ours is going to mimic and be very much like it will look and be market rate. Just 20% of those units, even though they look exactly the same, will command a little bit lower rent rate.
Yeah, that's good clarification. I think that's going to help our residents understand the intent of what's being developed here. That's great.
Okay.
Would it, if you've done projects like this in the past, and it doesn't have to be right now, but after the meeting or whatever, if you could share some communities where you've done this exact type of property that, we could evaluate, especially if it's done, a year or two ago, 5 or 10 years ago. I'd be interested to see what the state of those are today.
Okay, we can talk about that later. Sure.
I do just have one last question. How common is it when you guys are looking at a development of similar size to what we're doing here for the municipality to be structuring a TID district for a project like that? Do you see that often? I mean, is that a common?
At least
route that a lot
90% of
your
the time.
partners- Okay. Okay.
It really helps, as Stephen said, the capital stack. What will help with regard to the actual capital stack? What will help in trying to make the project viable and make it pencil? Typically, it's at least 90%.
Awesome. Thank you.
That do that. Mhm.
My partners always tell me to stop talking. But
You see how I walked away very slowly, wanting to.
not to let me up here. Okay, I owe him a coffee or something later. This is market rate housing. All of the units are designed to look identical. There's no difference between what's market rate and affordable. It's just whatever key's available when an affordable qualified tenant walks up to the leasing office. Let's just use some numbers as an example, and I'll be quick. Let's assume the area median income is $50,000. Okay, let's just assume that for conversation purposes, $50,000 AMI. To meet the requirements to be an affordable tenant, you cannot make more than 60% of the area median income. 60% of 50,000 is what? 30,000. If we use industry standards that no more than 1/3 of your income can go towards rent, that's 10,000 a year towards rent. So you divide that 10,000 by 12 months and it gives you a target rate of about 800 a month for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath affordable unit. The market report will address this directly. They'll give you the exact numbers. I'm just giving you an example where the market rate is going to be whatever Bowen and whatever the market will support. Again, it goes back to the financing model. We set the rates at what we need to have 1.1 times debt service coverage ratio versus a for-profit model of 1.25. And we only need 10% equity to make our projects work, where a for-profit needs 25%. Our project is not profit driven. When we are the developer, when we assign that development agreement, it's an assignment of a development agreement. We earn a developer fee. We're not. I heard someone ask if we're selling it at a profit. I think it was you, Megan. You said, do you sell it to somebody else? Or it might have been you, Eric, that said, do you sell it to somebody else? We don't take this project and sell it to somebody else and make a profit. We assign the development agreement to them and develop it exactly to the specs that we've told the city we're going to build it to. And I'll shut up now, Steve. Any questions?
I have one.
Okay, Bruce.
And maybe it's in front of me someplace, but you talk about 50,000 and medium income.
Mhm.
Is there a minimum income involved?
No, there's not. Per the report, it said that the AMI was 46,000 and change. I just rounded it up to 50, so it was easier conversation. But the affordable tenants cannot make more than 60% of the AMI. So they have to make 30,000 or less if the AMI was 50.
But there's not a minimum requirement.
No.
So, cool.
Okay, so for whomever qualifies, happy to have them. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll shut up for Steve. Thank you. Questions?
Any other questions from the council? Well, then I would say let's get to the business of 6B, which is the review and possible action relating to a master development and professional services agreement between the city of Fort Atkinson and Hoffman Development Group LLC and Cedar Prize LLC relating to the Banker Road Development Project.
You do have a memo in your packet that outlines the initial agreement as well as the draft, the final of this initial master development agreement. In that memo, staff outlines the commitments that the city is making, use of tax increment financing, commissioning the housing study, which is already done, our wetland delineation, phase 1 environmental, endangered species evaluation, surveying and planning. The total of these services is not to exceed $35,000. Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize are also making a lot of commitments. Their commitments can be, they will perform that work. And in addition to that work, a lot of their commitments can be seen in the exhibits in the master development agreement that's in the packet there. So the city is committing to paying for the professional services and deliverables from Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize in anticipation of the future development of the Banker Road properties in the amount of $35,000. I will note that all of the services and deliverables outlined in this agreement remain the property of the city. So if for some reason this development does not occur, we would have those documents, the wetland delineation, the environmental, the housing study, all of those documents would be owned by the city and be able to be used, on the very off chance that this development didn't move forward and we needed to find a new development partner. So when the city purchased that Banker Road parcels in 2018, the city borrowed funds to do so. And there is a remaining balance as of January 1st of about $126,000. Staff does recommend that the city council approve this agreement and assign that $35,000 from the balance of the borrowed funds there. So with that, staff does recommend that the city council approve the master development agreement, master development and professional services agreement between the city of Fort Atkinson and Hoffman Development Group LLC and Cedar Prize LLC, and authorize the city manager to execute that agreement. We further recommend that the $35,000 in professional service fees be paid through the Banker Road borrowing account that I referenced previously. Be happy to answer any questions.
We asked a lot of them already. No, I was not on council yet, when the land was originally purchased, so I know some of my colleagues feel a little bit more of a personal stake in this, but I know for all of us, there's so much importance behind this being done correctly. This was a huge investment from our city and has huge potential to make a really big difference for our community. And I mean, based on everything we have seen so far, I mean, the expertise and the knowledge and the background and also the actual investment from your company that comes along with that certainly makes me feel very confident that this would be the proper way to get this done correctly. So.
Thank you. I'll echo that. I would say, I think right now, the only thing that we would hear from our constituents is, can you break ground yesterday?
We've heard it already.
Yeah, so, definitely eager.
I think it's important to, for everybody to remember that, you know, this land while it's sitting empty, it was not, it was owned by a contractor who was planning to develop it and did not have a lot of experience in development. And I think it's been extremely fortunate that the city of Fort Atkinson was able to purchase that land and ensure that that development happened within the city and happened in a controlled, proper fashion, rather than what we might have ended up with otherwise. So I'm more than happy to make the motion to approve the master development and professional services agreement between the city of Fort Atkinson and Hoffman Development Group LLC and Cedar Prize LLC relating to the Banker Road Development Project, to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement and authorize up to $35,000 in professional services to be paid for through the Banker Road borrowing account.
I second.
Ready for that one. I will request that this be a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Hartwick.
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Shear.
Aye. Moves forward unanimously.
Thank you all very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and we look forward to working with you all.
Looking
You'll
forward to
see
our
us
cup of
more
coffee.
often.
Yes, that's great.
Thank you.
Well, that will take us to agenda item 6C, which is the review and possible action relating to a proclamation recognizing Kurt Wadinsky and Gail Sumi of the Wisconsin League of Municipalities upon their retirement.
Thank you. I'm just going to introduce this real quick. So the city's been a longstanding member of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. In fact, in this month's issue of the municipality, there is a large article about this very situation in encouraging new housing development in small communities in Wisconsin. This is something that I have spoke at a league chief executives conference. We've spoke at the Wisconsin Planners Association conference, and there is a group of us going to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities conference in October to speak on this as well. And I am very pleased to be able to bring the new news that we have a development agreement, a master development agreement with this group for that presentation. Kurt and Gail have been important employees in the league for many years, and the league continues to lobby for the interests of cities and villages across the state. They are an excellent resource on all things, as I'm sure the council understands, in getting those monthly municipality magazines, as well as the opportunities for education, league elected official 101 training, as well as many other manuals and other support resources for villages and cities in Wisconsin. So this proclamation recognizes two longstanding employees of the league, and it will be presented with proclamations from many other communities to Gail and Kurt at the league conference, the annual conference in October.
I move to approve the proclamation recognizing Kurt Witynski and Gail Sumi of the Wisconsin League of Municipalities and congratulate them on their retirement.
We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Agenda item 7 is resolutions and ordinances. 7A is the second reading and possible third final reading of an ordinance annexing the territory located at W6124 Sunset Avenue to the city of Fort Atkinson.
Yeah, so this one's second reading, like you said, it's pretty straightforward. Mr. Weiss has petitioned to have his property annexed to the city. He's at W6124 Sunset Avenue. We do have utilities in place. One thing to note, there's also a deferred assessment that is included on this property of $12,947.28 that Mr. Weiss has agreed to pay for.
So staff does recommend that the city council perform the second reading of the ordinance and suspend the rules to perform the third reading and enact the ordinance as proposed.
I move to waive the third reading and adopt the ordinance annexing the territory located at W6124 Sunset Avenue to the city of Fort Atkinson.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Point of order, in the past, we've had to
we
do
need
this
to
as separate.
Suspend the rules as a motion and then
Yeah, I have, I revised the motion a tad to, with approval of both council members to approve the second reading, suspend the rules, waive the third and adopt the ordinance. We have typically done adopting the ordinance in a second motion, so we can certainly separate those for point of order to make it clear. Would we still have the motion second for Councilman Schultz and Councilman Johnson to approve the second reading, suspend the rules and waive the third reading? Would that be appropriate? Still in support?
Agreed.
Okay. Manager Lemire, is that appropriate to continue? Okay. And
so,
roll call vote for that.
yes, please.
Okay. Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Hartwick.
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Shear.
Aye. So that would be to move to the third reading. So now we will look for a motion. Or am I off on that?
No, we'd have a motion to adopt ordinance.
I'll make the motion to adopt the ordinance annexing the territory located at W6124 Sunset Avenue to the city of Port Atkinson.
Second.
I meant to ask earlier, but I'm assuming staff has received no feedback on this from the public.
No.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And do we need any notation in there about the monies owed? The assessed funds or anything along those lines? No.
No.
Okay. This will also be a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Hartwick.
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Shear.
Aye, motion carries. Takes us to agenda item 8, which is reports of officers, boards and committees. 8A is the city manager's report.
Thank you. So on September 12th, elected officials appointed of committee members and city staff presented Tim and Jill Brunk with a Capital Catalyst revolving loan to support their new business, Papa Brunk's Bakery, to be located at 1220 Janesville Avenue. We're all very excited for the new business to locate in Fort Atkinson. And if anybody who's on the call or here is looking to start a new business or knows somebody who could use additional support for an existing business or a new business, please look at the city's website for more information. We still have about $485,000 to lend out, so we are looking for applications.
Is there a timeline on that?
There is, we have about, I think we can get an extension for another year or so to loan that money out.
Cool.
Staff continues to work on the 2023 budget and 2023 to 2028 capital improvements budget. Our first budget workshop with the city council will take place on October 11th. We were very happy to welcome the folks from Hoffman Development Group and Cedar Prize to our community. We really look forward to working with them for many years in the future on this project, as well as possible other local projects that they've expressed interest in already. And I'm very pleased to announce that the city has been awarded an EMS Flex grant from the state of Wisconsin for $130,500. We don't have details yet about which categories were funded at which level, but if you recall, we did apply for $305,000 through that EMS Flex grant. We will receive about $130,000, which will be used toward the startup costs for EMS service implementation and will free up the city's ARPA funds for other important projects and uses. Also later this month, TDS will begin a fiber installation project within the city's rights of way. We will be working with them on that project, making sure everything is permitted. But if you start to see folks from TDS digging things up, they are supposed to be there. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, unfinished business. This evening we have none. Agenda item 10, new business. 10A is the review and possible action relating to the 2023 recycling grant application to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
Thank you. In Andy's absence today, I have a few other things to report on. So this is one of them. So this is an annual grant program through the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. The grant supplements the cost of recycling and composting in the city. The city's estimated recycling expenditures in 2023 is about $225,000. The total represents an estimated increase of about 2.5% over 2022 recycling expenditures. The Wisconsin DNR has provided about $35,000 in grant funds over the last several years, and the city expects that amount to be similar in 2023. We will include that as a revenue in the 2023 budget as that moves forward. So staff does recommend that the city council approve the 2023 recycling grant application and authorize staff to sign and submit it to the Wisconsin Department of Resources.
I move to approve the 2023 recycling grant and authorize staff to sign and submit the application to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 10B, the actual 10B on our agenda, no, but the revised 10B on our agenda, there we go, is the review and possible action relating to the 2023 squad car bid and related equipment at a cost not to exceed $56,000.
It would not be normal in past years that I would come this early to request to start ordering items out of 2023 funds. In the last 8 years since I've been the chief here, this would be the second time I'm doing this. The first time was a few years back when Ford announced they were increasing the price of their squad cars for the next year. And if you didn't have your order in by this day, they would cost you $600 more. And that $1,200 price tag was quite a bit that we wanted to avoid. This request is similar in nature, where Ford has announced if you want to get a squad car in 2023, you need to get that order in September. So knowing that we have increases in our agency coming next year after the referendum, we really do need to have that additional vehicle in the fleet, and I don't want to lose that opportunity. So I kind of had to speed things up faster than I wanted to and get our quotes in order. As traditionally, I got a quote from the state contract winner, which is Ewald, who competed for that and was awarded that contract. And we know that that's going to be the best price you're going to get in the state. Also, it's important for me to get a quote locally, as I know that our Ford dealership can provide and get the same type of vehicle. So 2 quotes, one from Ewald and one from Griffin Ford. I'm pretty excited this year that the quote from our local dealership is only $155 more, which is the closest we've ever had those quotes be. I'm before you today asking to initiate this order a little earlier than normal, a little bit earlier than we traditionally would, but knowing why it's important that we do it. And also just to remind you that we're ordering it now to reserve that car, but we will not take delivery of it until 2023. We will not have to pay any money until 2023. And it looks like based off of the order date, they anticipate if we order it now, they'll start billing it in late December. So we definitely won't get it this year. And then just beyond that, we all know that when we order a squad car, it doesn't come with everything that we need to put in it. There's a lot of other safety equipment and a cost that comes with that. So, sirens, lights, cages, and camera system, all that good stuff. So I would like your permission to move forward and make that order. And then also when that vehicle comes in the new year, to then just be able to go right full steam ahead and do all the other things that need to be done. And that purchase and equipment and all the costs that go into it will not exceed that 56,000 that we're looking to have planned and set in the CIP budget for 2023. And I'm open for any questions that you might have.
Chief, is there any need to order the equipment and everything needed for the vehicle early, just with supply chain issues or inventory issues? I mean, I'd hate for you to get the new car and then not be
Yeah.
able to outfit
So,
it to be
yeah, so
ready.
I, that's why I want to get everything approved now, but I probably wouldn't order those things until November, December, based off of input from the supplier that does all the squad car work. Sometimes he has stuff sitting there waiting, and other times we know that we have to order it. So, yeah, this year we didn't get everything. I mean, our 2 brand new cars we ordered in December, or was it November? And I just got them on the road 3 weeks ago. So it was a really long wait. But I'm hoping that we'll plan everything out with permission to just go ahead and do everything now. I'll plan that out over the next couple months, and we won't have to worry about anything until the new year.
I will also note that this was approved by the council already as part of the 2022 borrowing. So we did borrow for 2 years of items when we borrowed in 2022, and this project was identified and approved by the council with that borrowing. So we actually do already have the funds for this project, even though it is a 2023 purchase and will be done so in 23. The actual project itself was already approved by the council as well.
I move to authorize the city manager to execute an order for a 2023 squad car from Griffin Ford for $38,774 and authorize staff to purchase additional equipment and squad transition items at a total cost not to exceed $56,000 in 2023.
Second. We have a motion and a couple seconds. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. To 10B, the review and possible action relating to a preliminary certified survey map for the property located on the 800 block of Mesmer Street.
All right, this is actually it's 3 different lots that the owner, which is the same, would like to combine a portion of those lots to make 2 lots out of the 3. One of those lots is essentially too small to do anything with. And then we have another lot that has just a house, and then the middle lot, it has a substandard, or excuse me, a non-conforming accessory structure on it. So by doing this, we're going to make a larger lot that can accommodate a residential home, and then be eliminating that non-conforming accessory structure and combining those 2 lots. The only thing with this is that we were going to be creating a substandard lot by creating this additional lot, whereas we have requirements in the SR5 that require it to be 120 feet deep. This one will only be 93 feet, but it does meet all the other requirements that are necessary for the SR5 zoning. And then with the topography in that area up on the hill there, it does create the separation that we are looking for in a residential neighborhood like that. Along with that, I think the city would recommend that we go ahead and approve that.
I will just add that that we would like to have the condition on that approval that the remainder of parcel 34049 and parcel 34048 be combined into one lot. So that contains the single family dwelling and the accessory structure. So there, the first condition that staff had during the plan commission was that the required front setback of 12 feet be included on the CSM. That has been done. So the second condition discussed at plan commission was just that we make sure that those 2 remainder parcels are combined into one. They are under common ownership. They are used together, but that they're combined into one lot so that we're not creating any nonconformities with accessory structures on their own lot.
And if I may just note, we do allow for that increased or in closer setback on the homes in our zoning ordinance does allow for that because of the existing homes around it being close to the property line as well.
I think the only question I had, and there's no concern, like with not meeting that specific depth issue, there's no concern related to building a property there or potentially the resale of a property there because of that?
Not given the properties that surround it. There
Okay.
are other properties that are closer than that and pretty much right up to the road.
Okay.
In a lot of instances, yeah.
Does this require an official variance to do that or?
Nope, that's allowed in our zoning ordinance. It's an average between the properties surrounding it. And you take those averages and it sets what is allowed for on that particular house.
And any building will have to adhere to the zoning setback. The setbacks for the front then is 12, which is permitted by the zoning code. And then the rear would remain the same in that zoning district, despite the fact that the lot is not as deep as some of the other lots.
I'm all for making another lot available for a home.
Yes.
Anyone care to make a motion?
I move to approve the preliminary certified survey map for the property located on the 800 block of Mesmer Street, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 10C or D, or whatever we're on to now, is the review and possible action on the rental agreement for agricultural land at the Fort Atkinson Municipal Airport.
Okay, thank you. So the city owns land at the Fort Atkinson Airport and has traditionally rented that agricultural land out. The current lease ends on December 31st of 2022. So we did seek bids or proposals for the agricultural land rental for January 1 of 2023 through December 31st of 2025. This particular lease is for 42.3 acres of land. For all the next 4 leases, we advertise the availability of the land lease in the Jefferson County Daily Union on August 26th and September 2nd. And we did post all the information to the city's website and Facebook page, notifying the public of these opportunities. We did open sealed bids on Thursday, September 15th at 2 p.m. in the municipal building. For this particular lease, there were 3 bidders who, and the bids are outlined in the staff report. So staff does recommend that the city council authorize the city manager to execute the agricultural land lease for the Fort Atkinson Municipal Airport with Broadlow Farms LLC for $26,649 or $200 per acre in 2023, $210 per acre in 2024, and $220 per acre in 2025 for the 2023 through 2025 term.
Rebecca, I'm just curious for my sake. Is there any additional due diligence or anything related to this process, or is it pretty much a strictly whoever the highest bidder is for the land?
Yeah, I mean, there are individuals or groups that we won't rent to because they have proven not responsible in the past.
Yep.
So we have no reason to believe that these folks are not responsible.
I would move to authorize the city manager to execute the agricultural land lease for the Fort Atkinson Municipal Airport with Broadlow Farms LLC for a total of $26,649 over the 2023-2025 term.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 10D is the review and possible action on a rental agreement for agriculture land on city-owned property in the Clement Business Park.
So the city owns land in the Clement Business Park and has rented it out traditionally, and the current lease ends at the end of this year. We sought agricultural land rental bids in the same manner as described for the last item for January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2025. This lease is for 27.6 acres of land. There were three bidders, And staff does recommend that the city council authorize the city manager to execute the agricultural land lease for the lands in Clement Business Park with Wilharm Hay Sales for $20,700 or $250 per acre for the 2023 to 2025 term.
I move to authorize the city manager to execute the agricultural land lease for the city-owned lands in the Clement Business Park with Wilharm Hay Sales for $20,700 for the 2023 through 2025 term.
Se-
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 10E is the review and possible action on rental agreement for agricultural hayland on city-owned property in the Clement Business Park. Is that a?
No, this is a different
Oh,
set
different parcel.
of,
There we go.
yep, different parcels is a different set that we allow to be used for haying only. So this same situation, we currently have the land rented for haying. The lease ends on December 31st. It's about 57.9 acres of land. We did have two bidders. And we do recommend that the city council authorize the city manager to execute the agricultural hayland lease for the lands in the Clement Business Park with Andrew Lupke for $24,318 or $140 per acre for the 2023 to 2025 term.
I'll move to authorize the city manager to execute the agricultural hay land lease, the city-owned lands in the Clement Business Park with Andrew Lupke for $24,318 for the 2023 to 2025 term.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to 10F, which is the review and possible action on rental agreement for hunting land on city-owned property near the wastewater utility.
Thank you. So this is a new lease as the city just purchased this land in 2020, I believe 2022 this year.
Yep.
So it's about 70 acres of land in the town of Kashkanan. The city sought bids for hunting lands with the term beginning upon approval through August 1st, 2025. We had four bidders, excuse me. And staff does recommend that the city council authorize the city manager to execute the hunting lease for city-owned property adjacent to the wastewater treatment facility with Matt Christensen for $4,200 or $15 per acre in 2022, $20 per acre in 2023, and $25 per acre in 2024 for the term described above.
I move to authorize the city manager to execute the hunting land lease for the city-owned property adjacent to the wastewater treatment facility with Matt Christensen for $4,200 for the 2022 through 2024 term.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Agenda item 11, miscellaneous. This evening we have none. Agenda item 12 is claims appropriations and contract payments. 12A is the review and possible action relating to the verified claims presented by the Director of Finance and authorization of payment.
Move to approve the list of verified claims presented by the Director of Finance and authorize payment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Hartwick.
Aye.
Councilman Johnson,
Aye.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Shear.
Aye. Motion carries. Takes us to agenda item 13, which is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, scouts, for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.